Studying about in this lecture about investigators brochure. Investigator brochures is a very crucial topic under drug development. um, let's look at it what it is. So this definition is given by ICH, International Council of Harmonization, under their E6 guideline. So look at it very carefully. The investigational brochure is the compilation of clinical and non-clinical data on investigational products that are relevant to the study of product in human subjects. So basically, this is investigational brochure is basically when you compile means put together. What all you're putting together is the clinical. So I have the clinical data in this, and I have the non-clinical data in this brochure. Now, this non-clinical clinical data is about what? The drug under study or my investigational product, right? That are relevant to the study of product in human subjects. So only that much information related to the drug study that is relevant to the study of the product. Nothing like alto falto type of information is required. So basically, this is to provide the principal investigator. Now, the word suggests like the investigator brochure. What does it mean? A brochure given to the investigator. A brochure that is for the investigator, and it contains all this information. And why is it given? It is given to the principal investigator so that they to provide him or her with a sufficient safety or performance data from preclinical and or clinical investigation to justify human exposure to investigational device specified or in the investigational protocol. So what happens that, for example, your drug has gone under preclinical trials, okay, and now is about to reach the clinical trials. So the investigator who would be conducting the clinical trial would find this investigator's brochure, which would contain a title page with current version number, a summary, an introduction, and a complete overview of physical, chemical, pharmaceutical properties and basic approaches. So it contains an introduction, a description of non-clinical pharmacology and product metabolism in animal as well as toxicology. So all this information, and we'll be studying it in detail down below, so don't worry, that will be mentioned in this brochure, and it is the responsibility of the investigator to go through it with the current version number on. And this is also a living document that as the study continues, the additional informations are also added. As your study progresses, all the updates are also added in this brochure. So it is the responsibility of investigator to read this brochure carefully before the beginning of the trials, because you know, especially in early phases of clinical trials, example like I said, like phase 1 clinical trial, because you don't have that much information about the product, or you don't have that much experience on humans. So then this is the only source where there you study about the safety or the toxicity of the drug. Now moving on, the purpose is to provide the investigator. The purpose of IB, this is also an ICH language, so read this very nicely. The purpose of IB is to provide the investigators and others involved in the trial with the information to facilitate their understanding of the rationale for and their compliance with many key features of the protocols. So basically, what they're trying to do is that they're trying to let you know, justify the human exposure to the investigational drug or device specified in the investigational protocol is what they're trying to do. So with this information provided, the investigator would be able to get the understanding of, or the justification of, or the compliance of the many key features of the protocol. So protocol, you made the protocol, you told the investigator to do this, but in the IB it would be clear like why this point and these tests are included, the justification, why this was in compliance. Okay, so all of these things would be provided to the investigator, and he would get the understanding from it. Now, what all things, many key features, they said that they will have the understanding of the rationale for and the compliance with many key features of the protocols. They have given example like dose frequency and interval, methods of administration, basically, and safety monitoring procedures. So what all they said, that dose frequency, or how much dose interval, methods of administration, and safety monitoring procedures. Okay, so investigators brochure is given to clinicians or investigators and other healthcare professionals involved in the conduct of clinical trials. For example, the study, just a second. For instance, the clinical trial coordinators and study nurses. So the IB is compilation of non-clinical and clinical data, whichever is relevant to the study in humans. And it is the single most comprehensive document summarizing the information on investigational medicinal product. And these basically are prepared by the sponsors. Who also controls the distribution of the document. So the IB for a clinical trial is submitted to the that is not important. Yeah. So there'd be justification given for why this dose was selected, why this dose frequency was selected, why this method of administration is done, and basically the safety monitoring procedures. So the IB also provide insights to support the clinical management of the study subjects during the course of the clinical trial. The information should be presented in a concise, simple, objective, balanced, and non-promotional form that enables a clinician or a potential investigator to understand it and make his or her own unbiased risk-benefit assessment of the appropriateness of the proposed trial. So imagine that you have given this IB to an investigator, okay, or a clinician, and he's not able to make out what actually you demands of them or what actually is required out of the clinical trial. So your language should be simple. Okay, the IB should be presented in a way where it is simple, concise. The objective should be clear. It should be balanced and non-promotional form. It's not that you would be giving only positives about your own drug. We need we need a very like unbiased opinion, and therefore the potential investigator would also understand it and make an unbiased risk benefit assessment of the appropriateness of the proposed trial, and that is how he would be able to make out based on his judgment towards the from the IB towards for the proposed trial. So for this reason, a medically qualified person should generally participate in the editing of an IB, but the contents of the IB should be approved by the disciplines that generated the described data. So this is quite explanatory, self-explanatory, that for this reason that we need it to be in a simple, balanced, and non-promotional form. Therefore, we need to have it get edited by a medically qualified person. However, they say that it should be approved by the disciplines that generated the described data. The purpose of IB is to compile data relevant to the studies. Okay, हम data को compile कर रहे हैं, इकट्ठा कर रहे हैं, जोड़ रहे हैं, जो कि studies के relevant है, which is related to the studies of the investigational product of what my drug under investigation in human subjects. Obviously, the patients and all those human subjects participating in a clinical trial gathered during preclinical and other clinical trials to provide the investigator with the information necessary for the management of the study conduct and study subjects through a clinical trial. So the example that I was giving earlier, that suppose you are the investigator of phase 1 clinical trial that is just about to begin. Now this investigator brochure will contain the preclinical and non-clinical data. Obviously we all know now that preclinical is the after preclinical successful approval, we began clinical trials in humans. So preclinical data will be there. Any other clinical data from any other trial for the same product will be mentioned, and that is how they will get the information for the management of the study conduct. How would they be conducting the study and study subjects throughout a clinical trial? So that is how then they will add the data of phase 1 also. After successful completion of phase 1, not even successful, even if it is unsuccessful, the data would be added. So any relevant information related to the trial, it is the responsibility of the sponsor to give it to the investigator via this investigator brochure, and it is the responsibility of the investigator brochure to read the current version of the IB and make use of it during the clinical trials or throughout a trial. जो भी इन्वेस्टिगेशन प्रोडक्ट है दैट इज ड्रग अंडर स्टडी, उसकी पूरी इन्फॉर्मेशन हमें आईबी से मिलती है. देयरफॉर इट इज इंपॉर्टेंट फॉर इन्वेस्टिगेटर टू रीड विद द करंट वर्जन वेरी केयरफुली. When the investigation product is marketed, its pharmacology is widely understood by medical practitioners and extensive IV may not be necessary. So this is a point given in ICH E6 कि अगर एक investigational product है जो कि मार्केट में लॉन्च हुआ है और उसकी फार्माकोलॉजी वाइडली अंडरस्टूड है बाय मेडिसिनल प्रैक्टिशनर्स, सो एक लेंदी आईवी बनाना नेसेसरी नहीं है in these cases. But what should be done in these cases? A basic product information brochure, package leaflet, or an expanded background information section in the trial protocol may be permitted by the regulatory authorities as an alternative, provided that it includes current, comprehensive, and detailed information. So why did they say current? Because we do not want any information that is backdated, because whatever is happening right now is of our utmost importance. Also we'll look at the proceedings, but that is some other case. So current information is most important here. Comprehensive means as much as detailed information you could get on all aspects of the investigational product that might be of importance to the investigator. The IB should be reviewed at least annually. Again, this is a point given in your ICH E6 that it should be reviewed at least annually. So if you are in a pharmaceutical company, then in your SOP you can write that IB should be reviewed each 6 months or 12 months, because they say at least annually. So at least yearly it should be reviewed is what they're trying to say. Specific months or dates or whatever you want to fix it, up to you, but it should not be binary. Like, not your it should not come up to the auditor and say that no, we reviewed it 2 times in once in 2 years. No, because they mention at least annually. And revised as necessary in compliance with the sponsor's written procedure. When new information relevant to the clinical trial becomes available, it should be communicated to the investigators. Anyhow, if there is any new information that has come up regarding the clinical trial, it should be available and it becomes available to you. It should be communicated to the investigator. That is why we said that everything related to drug development, regulatory strategy, we studied in the previous lecture series. We said that regulatory strategy document is a living document. This is why, because as and when the information will be there, this IB will get updated, and possibly to the institutional review boards or independent ethics committee and or regulatory authorities prior to a scheduled revision of the IB. So to not only to the investigators, they said, but if possible to the IRBs and IECs as well, and or to the regulatory authorities prior to a scheduled revision of IB. Generally, the sponsor is responsible for ensuring that an up-to-date IB is made available to the investigators, and the investigators are responsible for providing up-to-date IB to the responsible IRBs or IECs. Now let's study this as a flowchart, in a flowchart form. What they said, that sponsor is responsible to give up-to-date IBs to who? The investigator. And the investigator is then responsible to give up-to-date IBs, up-to-date or current version of IBs to the IRBs or IECs. So that is how you will learn the responsibilities. In case of an investigator sponsor trial, the sponsor investigator should determine whether a brochure is available from the commercial manufacturer. So these are all the clause that is written in ICH. It will be very good if you would read all through it. If the investigational product is provided by the sponsor investigator, then he or she should provide the necessary information to the trial personnel. In case where preparation of a format IB is impractical, the sponsor investigator should provide as a substitute an expanded background information section in the trial protocol that contains the minimum current information. So this is the case given when the if it is an investigator sponsored trial. That is, like, if it is an investigator sponsored trial, then the sponsor investigator should determine कि जो commercial manufacturer है उसके पास वो brochure available है कि नहीं जहाँ से हमारी drug आ रही है. If the investigational product is provided by the sponsor investigator, if you are providing as a sponsor investigator the drug under investigation, then आपकी responsibility है कि आप necessary information दे उस trial personnel को. अगर ऐसी सिचुएशन है जहाँ पे एक फॉर्मेट IB बनाना इम्प्रैक्टिकल है, तो स्पॉन्सर इन्वेस्टिगेटर की रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी है कि एज अ सब्सटीट्यूट ऑफ दिस IB ही शुड गिव और ही और शी शुड गिव एन एक्सपैंडेड बैकग्राउंड इन्फॉर्मेशन सेक्शन. मतलब ट्रायल प्रोटोकॉल में ही, अलग से IB नहीं दे रहे आप, ट्रायल प्रोटोकॉल में ही एक एक्सपैंडेड बैकग्राउंड इन्फॉर्मेशन सेक्शन हो जिसमें कि उस प्रोडक्ट के बारे में मिनिमम करंट इन्फॉर्मेशन दी गई हो. An IB contains, so this is kind of like a summary now, that an IB contains summary of data and guidance for the investigator. ठीक है. So the IB में ये एक section होता है basically. What is that section name? Summary of data and guidance for the investigator, of which the overall aim is to provide the investigator with a clear understanding of the possible risks and adverse reaction of the specific test, observations and precautions that may be needed for a clinical trial. तो उस section में basically overall क्या लिखा रहता है? उस इन्वेस्टिगेटर को एक क्लियर अंडरस्टैंडिंग देना, उस इन्वेस्टिगेटर को समझाना कि आपके पॉसिबल रिस्क ये हो सकते हैं, सो लुक आउट फॉर दैट। तो जब वो इन्वेस्टिगेटर अपना क्लिनिकल ट्रायल चालू करेगा, वो कुछ इस तरह से अपना प्लान प्लॉट करेगा कि ही वुड अवॉइड दिस पॉसिबल रिस्क, और एटलीस्ट ही वुड हैव दैट इन हिज माइंड इंस्टेड ऑफ गोइंग ब्लाइंडली इन द वॉर ऑफ द पॉसिबल एडवर्स रिएक्शन। कि साहिब, हमें प्री क्लिनिकल में जब हमने एनिमल्स पे ये ट्रायल कंडक्ट किया था, सो एंड सो एडवर्स रिएक्शंस और रिस्क हमें देखने को मिले थे, तो उस हिसाब से आप प्लान करिएगा। Of specific tests, whatever my observations are or were, or whatever precautions you want that investigator to carry forward, and that may be needed for a clinical trial. Summary of data and guidance for the investigator section. All it is in all of this is mentioned. This understanding should be based on available. Now, very important. This line is that you're not saying this कि मैंने एक test conduct किया, and basis of that you're not just simply saying it. You're giving them with the scientific proof. The whole pharmaceutical I want to use the word management, I don't know whether I'm right or wrong, but the whole establishment, whenever you face an auditor and you give them ki this is my proof, that is why I did this, he would always ask you, provide me with the scientific proof. He would never ask you to give me your logic, your explanation. No, give me the proof. The science will prove that fact. If your product failed, or if your product is showing good response, if your product is showing bad response in preclinical trials, show me the proof of that. So this understanding should be based on available physical, chemical, pharmaceutical, pharmacological, toxicological, and clinical information on the investigational product. So physical, chemical, pharmaceutical, pharmacological, toxicological, and clinical information on the investigation product. You're not saying anything out of your own understanding. So guidance should also be provided to the clinical investigator on the recognition and treatment of possible overdose and adverse drug reaction that is based on previous human experience and on the pharmacology of the investigational product. Now, if you are having an investigational product, little bit pharmacology of that product you would know. कि suppose if this product is inhibiting this receptor और उसका overdose हो गया तो ये adverse reaction होगा, तो हम ये antidote देख के उस overdose को reverse कर सकते हैं। या फिर किसी और ट्रायल में सेम इन्वेस्टिगेशन प्रोडक्ट यूज हुआ हो तो आप उसका भी रेफरेंस ले सकते हो। बट व्हाट दे आर ट्राइंग टू से कि इस आईबी में गाइडेंस होनी चाहिए इन्वेस्टिगेटर के लिए, ताकि वो रिकॉग्नाइज कर पाए और ट्रीटमेंट दे पाए फॉर पॉसिबल ओवरडोज होता है या फिर कोई एडीआर होता है तो। So, owing to the importance of IB in maintaining the safety of human subjects, okay, because why in the beginning of the lecture I said that it is considered the most critical document. Why? Because IB actually maintains the safety of human subjects. It is important for maintaining the safety of human subjects. If IB is removed from this drug development process throughout, the clinical trial would not be a success as it is nowadays. So, in clinical trial, and as a part of guidance on good clinical practices, the US FDA has written regulatory codes and guidances for authoring the IB, and the ICH has prepared a detailed guidance for authoring the IB in the European Union, Japan, and US. So let's take a look at what ICH GCP guideline has to say about IP, and I think it's a very detailed form. It's a very comprehensive guideline in itself about IB. It has a whole section in ICH. GCP, I think E6 is the guideline, and this is the section 7 contains information about IB. You can yourself look up. So we'll study this in the next lecture with a fresh mind. What all things did ICH GCP says about IB? Till then, like, share, and subscribe, and do not forget to turn on the post notification. I'm working really hard for these videos to provide information to you. The least you can do is subscribe. It's for free. And thank you. Comment down below if you want to see more such videos.